This is Cyber Sam, and let's teach tech. So I wanted to share my general teaching style. Having taught for roughly 20 years or so at this point, I have a certain style of teaching that I just really recommend. So I generally do a really old school style of teaching in which I am trying to get 80% of students to move along and show understanding before I move to the next topic or the next concept or whatever. I've read a lot of teaching books, and this is just solid practice. I find myself always envious of grade school teachers. I think if you follow what grade school teachers are doing in their classes and doing movement and visuals and songs and all those kinds of things, that's really good teaching practice. They're walking around the room. They are constantly asking questions with students. That is the style of teaching that I highly recommend. So this is not what I've been doing consistently. So I've been teaching this new course this year, and I found myself doing what I think a lot of teachers do in higher education and in career technical education kinds of courses, where it's kind of like, I give you the learning materials or I give you a project, and then I just set you free to show me everything you got and maybe follow a rubric or follow the expectations for this project or whatever, and go get them. Sure enough, I found myself trying that out. I've got a solid website that's got really great screenshots and step-by-step instructions, and it's so clear. It just doesn't work. I walk around the room, hey, what step are you on? Where are you at? And students can kind of articulate, and I can try to answer any troubleshooting questions or technical issues and so on. But sure enough, this just doesn't work well. It doesn't work as well as a group. We all do this together. And again, if I have roughly 80% of students with me, let's move on to the next step. I'm kicking myself for trying just the set you free, learn kind of approach. It just is not as effective, in my professional opinion, having taught for 20 years. Basic teaching 101, having clear learning targets on the board, visible to students, trying to engage students in a bell ringer, or it could be hopefully ideally an activity that gets their brain engaged in the lesson, but sometimes it's just a team building, a video. I do Pictionary, I do all sorts of stuff with students, doing a crossword puzzle on our smart board, things like that. Anything to get them engaged in the class other than walking to their seat and just pulling up their phone and zoning in their little world, trying to get them out and engaged with other people in the class. Starting the class that way, saying hi to my students by name as they enter the room, asking how their weekend was, things like that. And then when we're learning about concepts and I'm teaching, let's say with a PowerPoint, I'm going through those concepts, I'm drawing names. I write their names on tongue depressors, and I draw their names. I don't have students raise their hands in my class. I've read a great book by Dylan William that talks about formative assessment. So I don't want to hear from all the students who just want to talk or have the answer. I want to hear from all my students. So I draw their names randomly, ask them questions. I have them, if I'm finding a few students aren't answering the question, then I have them talk to the neighbor and try to process through the concept and so on. I've got built-in formative assessment in my lessons. We've talked about that before. So I'm constantly doing checks for understanding during the lesson, and then we do simulated lab practices often in my class. We're doing those together. I might be running the show myself and saying, okay, everyone, or clicking here and maybe drawing someone's name. What do you think we should do next, Sally? All right, great. What should we do next? Or so I could engage students that way. And then I can sometimes I will, if they're very short labs, I will split up and say, front row, you do this lab, second row, you do this lab, third row, you do this lab, or whatever. Give them 5 minutes and do, hey, fist of 5, how many more minutes do you need? Fist of 5 means 0 means I'm done. I need 2 more minutes to finish my work. I need 5 more minutes or whatever. And they raise their hand and I can gauge and say, all right, I'll give you 2 more minutes. And then in 2 minutes I say, okay, front row. And then the front row uses my computer on my projector and they model how to do the lab, and the other students are engaged and following along. I might have one student running the computer. I might have one student standing up and talking through the screen. I might have other students walking around the room and helping the rest of the class make sure they are following along and so on. And they're practicing presentation skills. They're engaging with their classmates, and we're building this community of practicing together. We're not assessing this, we're practicing. We're doing this probably for the first time ever in our lives. And so we got to practice doing these things. I might say, thumbs up, are you done? Thumbs down, I'm not quite done yet. Or something like that to get a gauge if we're all ready to move on. And then they get feedback from the lab, whether they've scored well on that lab. The website will tell them that. Once I've got people on the same page, we move on as a group. I might teach a few concepts, and then I might pull out the assessment for, let's say, the A, B, and C concepts and say, okay, we've done A, B, and C. And then maybe the next day I'll go, okay, we should be able to, complete the A, B, and C part of the assessment. Let's spend some time doing that. So we've gone from learning it for the first time, we've gone to practicing it, and then we're going to assessing it. You just kind of have to feel out whether it flows better to assess it right along the way or to do all the learning and then assess at the end. It's really kind of your choice. As long as they're learning and you've given them enough practice and scaffolding, it's up to you. I found myself with one of my assessments, the assessment itself wasn't done, and I was using the Azure Labs for the first time. It wasn't quite set up, so there was about 2-week gap between finishing the learning and practicing to the assessment, and that has shown to be quite a bit of too much of a gap where I'm having to reteach concepts because it was too far away for students to kind of remember how to do it themselves. So that's just part of the game. That's my job. If enough students are not understanding and able to do the work on their own or with the provided resources, then that falls back on me as the instructor. I need to do the scaffolding. I need to provide more practice. So I reviewed the labs that go along with the assessment. I didn't do the assessment, but I reviewed the labs and pointed out the resources that they've gotten to this point to help them complete the assessment. So sure enough, starting tomorrow or next week, I'm going to go back in my other course to old school. Are we all together? Do we get this? Does your screen look like mine or whatever? And then we move on. There's a lot of challenges with this, though. In the technology world, it can be very, I think, overwhelming when I've got, let's say, 20 to 30 students in the room and they are like, what? I've got an error. This is wrong. What did you type? What's going on? So I've got a few tools to help with that. So we use, we're a Microsoft shop at this school, so we use Microsoft Teams. So I share my screen at the beginning of every class so students can see my screen on their screen. And we happen to have dual monitors and a nice setup there. So students can follow right along with my screen on their screen. That is a huge, huge help. They don't have to look up at the projector. They don't have to do anything other than look straight in front of them and see my work compared to theirs. Makes a huge, huge difference. The next tip I give is ask 3, then ask me. If I'm the first go-to for any question, then I become a bottleneck in the class and I'm going to slow them down. We've talked about this before, and quite honestly, it becomes really frustrating for me when I'm likely having to repeat the same things over and over, where we're at or what we typed or what we configured or whatever. So ask 3, then ask me really points out that we're all working together. You have a partner. You can work with your partner on things. You can ask people around you, and let's ask others, because we have so many smart people in the class. Let's take advantage of all the resources around us to keep, again, the whole class in general moving forward, learning and growing and progressing in the curriculum. So I might make some exceptions with this. I might say students who are cranking through the work and they just don't want to work as a class, I sometimes might break up and say, yeah, you just go ahead. You just work ahead. I just need, if you're behind or you're not with me, that means you don't have a choice. We're all working on this together. But if you can push ahead and can continue learning on your own, that might make sense for what your teaching style or what you're doing. Some adult learners, higher education learners, might be able to handle some of the independent, just go learn and use the resources I've given you. But I'm going to just, again, after 20 years, I'm pretty opinionated on this. I find that if I really want to make progress and learn as a class and take advantage of community and, working face to face with people and learning together and people asking questions that clarify as we're going through the curriculum, it's just better this way, in my opinion. It's a lot easier to just sit at your computer and say, go learn, kids, and you can just sit at your desk and do your grading or whatever administrative tasks you might have and get some work done. But I think it's just better for students if you're up out of your seat, walking around the room, answering questions, but keeping everyone moving at a pace as an overall class. So what are your thoughts on this old school teaching style? Do you agree with this? Do you not agree with this? Please let me know in the comments. This is Cyber Sam for Let's Teach Tech. We'll see you next time.